when The Hollywood Reporter announced that Universal had pulled Soulmate, the planned spin-off of M3GAN, from its release calendar, it wasn't just a scheduling update, it was a signal. A signal that Blumhouse, the studio behind M3GAN, was reassessing its strategy after a string of box office disappointments. And it's worth unpacking why this matters, because M3GAN was supposed to be Blumhouse's next big franchise. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about overestimating meme power, underestimating competition, and forgetting the fundamentals of horror timing. The story really begins in January of 2023, when the original M3GAN hit theaters. January is traditionally considered a dump month in Hollywood. It's the time when studios release films they don't expect to perform well, often with very minimal marketing. The logic is simple. Audiences are coming off the holiday season, Oscar contenders are still dominating conversations, and blockbuster season is months away. January is where movies go to die, and yet every so often, a film defies the odds. Split in 2017 shocked everyone with a $40 million opening weekend and went on to become a sleeper hit. The Book of Eli, all the way back in 2010, opened strong despite its weak setting, becoming yet another sleeper hit. Even Kung Fu Panda 3 in 2016 strategically timed its release to coincide with Chinese New Year, pulling in $41.3 million opening weekend domestically. These exceptions prove that January can be fertile ground if the right film lands at the right time. M3GAN was one of those exceptions. Against a modest $12 million production budget, it earned $180 million worldwide. That's not just profitable, that's a phenomenon. And it wasn't because the film reinvented the wheel. It leaned into a tried and true horror trope, the killer doll. Audiences have been fascinated by creepy dolls for decades, from Child's Play's Chucky to Annabelle in the Conjuring universe to the cult VHS classic Puppet Master. Even outside film, dolls and puppets have long been unsettling. Slappy, the ventriloquist dummy from R.L. Stein's Goosebumps series, became a mascot precisely because of how unnerving he was. Dolls are uncanny. They blur the line between innocence and menace, and they practically write themselves as horror antagonists. What made M3GAN stand out wasn't just the killer doll premise, but the way it tapped into internet culture. At one point in the film, M3GAN performs a bizarre dance before killing her next victim. That dance went viral. It became a meme, spreading across TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Whether Blumhouse intended or not, the dance gave the film a second life online, turning it into a cultural moment. Suddenly, M3GAN wasn't just a movie, it was a meme generator, and that meme power helped fuel its box office legs. So, with that kind of success, a sequel was inevitable. Enter M3GAN 2.0, released in 2025. On paper, it should have been another hit, but instead, it bombed. Opening to just $10 million domestically and $17 million worldwide against a $25 million budget, it was a sharp contrast to the original. So what went wrong? Part of the problem was timing. Blumhouse decided to release M3GAN 2.0 in the summer, a season dominated by blockbusters. Summer is when studios roll out their biggest franchises, think Marvel, Pixar, Fast and Furious, animated tentpoles. It's a corridor built for spectacle, not mid-budget horror. The first M3GAN thrived in January precisely because it had little competition. In summer, it was drowned out. Another problem was the genre shift. The original was a straightforward killer doll movie. The sequel tried to reposition M3GAN as more of a sci-fi action protagonist, a Terminator 2 move. Jason Blum himself admitted the mistake, saying, quote, "We all thought M3GAN was like Superman. We could do anything to her. We could change genres. We could put her in the summer. We could make her look different. We could turn her from a bad guy into a good guy. And we classically overthought how powerful people's engagement really was with her." End quote. That quote is telling. Blumhouse assumed M3GAN had the cultural staying power of an icon, when in reality, her appeal was more situational. The meme factor also backfired. The dance scene worked once, but Blumhouse leaned too hard into camp in the sequel. Audiences didn't find it fresh anymore. It's a reminder that memes can amplify awareness, but they rarely translate into sustained box office. Sony learned this the hard way with Morbius back in 2022. The film bombed on release. Then the ironic "it's Morbin time" meme spread online everywhere like wildfire. Sony misread the room, re-released Morbius into theaters to capitalize on the meme, and it bombed even harder the second time. Memes don't equal demand. Blumhouse tried to memify M3GAN, but audiences weren't interested in paying for the joke twice. The failure of M3GAN 2.0 wasn't isolated either. Blumhouse's entire 2025 slate was rough. Wolfman, The Woman in the Yard, Drop, and M3GAN 2.0 all underperformed theatrically. It looked like Blumhouse had lost its touch. But here's where their business model comes in. Blumhouse operates differently from studios chasing $200 million tentpoles. Their films are cheap, usually under $20 million. That means even when they bomb theatrically, they can eventually make their money back through streaming, PVOD, Blu-ray, and international sales. This low-risk approach allows them to experiment. They can afford to try genre shifts, meme-driven marketing, or unusual release strategies because the downside is limited. Universal isn't terrified of Blumhouse's bombs because the budgets are small enough to absorb. And sure enough, Blumhouse found recovery. In October 2025, Black Phone 2 hit theaters. This was a head-scratcher for many because at the end of 2021's The Black Phone, the villain known as the Grabber dies. Normally, franchises handle this by shifting focus. The Saw series continued after John Kramer's death in Saw 3 by introducing his proteges, but Blumhouse didn't take that route. Instead, Ethan Hawke returned as the Grabber in Black Phone 2. How do you make a sequel when the villain is dead? Blumhouse answered by simply bringing him back. It raised eyebrows, but it worked. Black Phone 2 was a box office hit, proving that Blumhouse could rebound with straightforward horror even after a string of flops. And to be fair, horror has always had a history of resurrecting its slashers. Even Friday the 13th killed off Jason Voorhees in Part 4, only to bring him back to life in Part 6. In that same film, he's drowned again in Crystal Lake, only to be resurrected in Part 7 by the telekinetic girl, who then re-drowns him when her resurrected father pulls Jason back down to the depths of Crystal Lake. Then in Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason is bizarrely transformed back into the 10-year-old boy he was before he first drowned at Camp Crystal Lake, effectively ending Friday the 13th. Horror has never been shy about bending logic to keep its villains alive. So while The Grabber's return was surprising, it wasn't unprecedented. Blumhouse was simply tapping into a long tradition of horror franchises reviving their monsters, no matter how many times they've been killed. Then came Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in December of 2025. It opened to $64 million with no day and date release on Peacock, showing that Blumhouse could still deliver massive theatrical numbers. The success of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was essentially guaranteed by the performance of the first film. Back in 2023, Five Nights at Freddy's opened $80 million despite being a day-and-date release on Peacock, a rare feat that underscored the strength of the IP. The first film's box office proved that the fanbase was so dedicated that a sequel would thrive no matter what. Together, Black Phone 2 and Five Nights at Freddy's 2 demonstrated Blumhouse's resilience. Even when other projects bomb, low-cost horror tied to popular IP can stabilize the slate, not the state, if I can speak today. So what are the lessons here? First, timing matters. M3GAN succeeded because it was released in January, a dead month where it had room to breathe. M3GAN 2.0 failed because it was thrown into the summer blockbuster gauntlet. Second, genre identity matters. Audiences connected with M3GAN as a killer doll. Shifting her into sci-fi action confused that identity. Third, meme power is fleeting. The dance scene was lightning in a bottle, but trying to replicate it was a mistake. Fourth, Blumhouse's business model insulates them from disaster. Their films are cheap enough to experiment, and even when they fail, they can recover quickly. The cancellation of Soulmate is part of this recalibration. Blumhouse and Universal are recognizing that not every idea deserves a franchise, and not every meme moment can be stretched into a cinematic universe. Horror has always thrived on simplicity, timing, and cultural resonance. When studios chase trends or force sequels without a clear narrative path, audiences tune out. But when they stick to fundamentals, creepy dolls, unsettling villains, dedicated fan bases, they can still deliver hits. M3GAN was lightning in a bottle. M3GAN 2.0 was a reminder that lightning doesn't strike twice just because you want it to. Blumhouse will survive because their model allows them to fail cheaply and succeed spectacularly. The real takeaway is that horror doesn't need to be overthought. It just needs to be scary, timely, and authentic. And that's something Blumhouse, for all its missteps, still understands better than most.